Hello and welcome back to the Batman Arkham Knight Gadget Only run. If you didn't see part 1, I have to get through the entire game using only gadgets. This includes the Batmobile, and the only exception is evading. Before we start this part, I have to mention something. Around a week after I posted the original video, I was on YouTube and I found a video called "Can You Beat Batman Arkham Knight Without Punching or Countering?" I realized that this challenge was very similar to the one I'm doing, and I thought I would have to retract my statement of being the first person to do a run like this. Turns out they're not the same in the slightest. He still uses stealth takedowns and other moves like environmental takedowns. I will have this video linked in the description if you want to watch it. Now, why am I mentioning this? Well, he figured out that you can defeat the ninja enemies with explosive gel, but it just takes a very long time. In part 1, I said that there was no way to do it. And I'm not going to restart the challenge because of this, but after I complete it, I will go back through it again and try to improve it. Also, this footage may not look as good as the footage in part 1. This is because I had to lower the bitrate because the file sizes were getting too out of control. Anyways, let's begin part 2. We pick up right where we left off in Ace Chemicals. I shot the wall to enter the final area, and I spent way too much time trying to enter this hole. Eventually, I realized I needed the ramp to bring the Batmobile in with me, and I jumped in. I took out the 2 drones and was presented with my first encounter. This is when sentry guns are introduced, and I thought I would have to use a fear takedown to take out the enemies before it saw me. Without even really thinking, I destroyed the sentry gun normally. Since it isn't really an enemy, I'll allow it, and it's too late at this point. You don't really have to destroy them anyways, and if I encounter more of them, I'll try to start using explosive gel. After the turret was down, I used smoke bombs and explosive gel to take out the 2 enemies. Next up, we have a massive combat encounter. I surveyed the area and thankfully found no ninjas, but I knew this was going to be tricky. Luckily, I was able to bring the Batmobile in, and I did this. Strangely, whenever I got in the Batmobile, all of the enemies would run and hide in a different room to avoid being in range of the cannons. This was incredibly easy to overcome. I just got out of the car, waited for them to come to me, and then got back in and took out as many as I could before they ran back. I repeated this until all of the enemies were down. After that, we have our next Predator encounter. This took a very long time to get through. I took out a sentry gun, still not realizing that the animation wasn't using a gadget, but whatever. I took out the first enemy by using a destructible wall, the second with the smoke bomb strat, and the third guy kinda with explosive gel. After only 2 enemies down, I had already entered the no more explosive gel period, and I was getting worried. I remember what that guy said about how he took out the ninjas with an uncountable amount of gel, and I figured that that would apply to these enemies too. So I kept bombarding this guard with explosive gel, somehow not alerting the others. And eventually, this happened. This kind of feels like cheating, but technically I only used gadgets and the broken part of the game did the rest. I didn't even know that you can knock an enemy out of the map like that. Anyways, I used a line launcher takedown on the 4th guard and started to target the 5th. I also realized that all of the enemies just went back to work after their friends got knocked out. Guess they don't really care about their safety too much. Anyway, I was having trouble getting the line launcher takedown to work, and either I wasn't doing something correctly or the same rule with the gel applied here. It seems you can only use a line launcher takedown once, at least for now. After realizing this, I resorted to bombarding him with explosive gel. And just like the 3rd enemy, I also got this one shoved out of the map. He didn't even hit the floor, he just teleported back to the main area. It still kind of feels like cheating, but going by the rules, it isn't, and the game I guess is just a little broken, so let's move on. The final 3 enemies were confined to a smaller section of the area, a small building with glass windows. These windows ended up being a problem because they made a lot of noise when I entered them. Later on, I ended up throwing batterangs at them to break them without being directly on top of them. Things were not looking good here. I couldn't line up a line launcher shot at all, and the explosive gel wouldn't be much use. They were spotting traps I made, and the immunity was already in effect. Finally, I found a spot to line up a line launcher takedown, but it wasn't effective at all. I would have had to lure enemies to the right place, which would more likely than not have them spot me. If you are detected, you can't use a line launcher takedown. It just doesn't work. I realized this idea would be either impossible or extremely annoying, and I looked for another way. I got spotted by an enemy and just decided to take him head on. I sprayed him with quick-fire explosive gel and bombarded him with batterangs. And surprisingly enough, that ended up being the solution. Getting enemies to fall off of this ledge was without a doubt the easiest way to get through this part. I tried this again and learned that the guard railings over here protected them from falling. They would have to fall off the same ledge as the first guy. When the second enemy was in position, I realized that batterangs were not as effective as they were with the first. Nothing was effective actually. I evaded over them to try to get him to fall, but that didn't work either. The final solution ended up being a combination of both. If I use the batclaw to bring enemies to me and evade over them, they will go flying. I had tried this before in my initial testing, but I try not to use it because it does slightly fill up your combo meter. The more I thought about it, I realized that this completely falls in the established rules and I don't have a problem with it anymore. This makes stealth 100 times easier. I took out the third guy, and finally, after nearly 20 minutes, I had finished this encounter. The next few parts aren't really that different at all. They're basically played normally. I did die at the neutralizing agent puzzle on the first try, but got through it on the second. The next section with Gordon is also the same. I did get a sneak peek at something that I think is going to be very useful very soon, however. I headed to GCPD to pick up Gordon to take him to the clock tower, defeating a few drones along the way. Still not anything different. Eventually, we got to another Predator section on top of the clock tower. I took out the medic first just to get him out of the way. I took out the second guard using a destructible wall, and the third with the smoke bomb strat. Then the Arkham Knight told me that he knows my tactics and he will tell his men about them. He told his guards to watch out for weak walls, and the remaining guards shot them all down. I had completely forgotten that the AI can adapt to your tactics, and this can easily be a problem from now on. I got the fourth guy with the line launcher takedown, and the fifth with explosive gel, so maybe there isn't an immunity, maybe it's random, I don't know. Actually, I take that back. The immunity is set in with the final enemy. I tried getting him to fall off the edge with the batclaw evading strat, but there was an invisible wall preventing him from falling. As I kept doing this, trying to get him to fall, he eventually was just knocked out from flying into a wall. This is when I realized how useful this strat is. Then, after a creepy hallucination, Gordon finds out Barbara has been taken and gets mad at us. I figured out how she was taken through the CCTV and headed to the movie studios. I only went there to pick up the Freeze Blast, a useful gadget returning from Arkham City. I haven't used it too much at this point, but I think it will be very useful for enemies like the ninjas. After obtaining it, I followed the car's tracks. I completed the drone fight normally and headed to Miyagani Island to lower the bridge. To do so, I had to do another stealth section. I took out the first two guards with explosive gel and the immunity set in with the third. Since the gel didn't work, I used the line launcher. Then I strangely got detected, but they lost sight of me quickly. I took out the next guy with the batclaw strat, and it only took me 3 grapples to knock him out. This strat gets more and more useful every time I use it. I repeated this again for the next guy, and used the line launcher on the one after that. I guess there isn't an immunity for the line launcher like I thought. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, I don't know. With only 2 enemies left, I freeze one of them so I could focus on one at a time. I decided not to allow freeze smash takedowns, at least for now. I annihilated the freeze enemy with 3 explosive gels at once, but it was again ineffective. I finished him off with the batclaw strat. I lowered the bridge, but I had to help Catwoman before I could continue following the trail. There were a few guys outside that I had to deal with first. I snuck in and threw a smoke bomb, giving me time to place some explosive gel. The game told me not to take out the Riddler informant, and even though there were 2 other enemies right next to him, the informant was somehow the one to be knocked out. Thankfully, it didn't mission fail me. The rest of the enemies weren't too bad. I tried out the batclaw strat for the first time in melee combat and found that using it, your combo could not grow past 2 times. It was still a very efficient way to take out the enemies. Next, we have the robot fight with Catwoman. This was probably one of the hardest fights I've done so far, excluding the ninja ones. The robots were immune to explosive gel and smoke bombs didn't affect them at all. Thankfully, this is a 2-person fight. I had Catwoman fighting alongside me, and she did most of the work. I didn't switch characters because I figured that Catwoman would not be nearly as useful as Batman due to her limited number of gadgets. I could also switch right when she was attacking, and then it would switch to me hitting the enemy, which is not allowed. I didn't have a problem with the AI not using gadgets, but I decided to never allow the AI to control Batman so that he, as a character, only used gadgets throughout the entire story. Or at least most of it. Catwoman was taking down the robots, but very slowly. There wasn't really anything I could do, but I did find that the remote electrical charge massively stuns them, and it throws them across the arena. With 1 enemy left, Catwoman was not attacking it, and I was worried that I would have to do it myself, but finally, she took it out and the encounter was over. Since I'm not doing the Riddler side missions, I don't think I'll ever have to fight robots again, which is great. I went back to the Batmobile and continued to follow the trail. There were a few drones here and there, but they weren't much of a problem. I got to and investigated the crime scene and headed to Wayne Tower to track the Arkham Knight. In the last video, I said that it had been a very long time since I played this game and I couldn't remember if you could get a new gadget here or not. I opened the secret batsuit display and got really excited. I thought I was going to get the disruptor here, but Lucius was just showing it to me. After that disappointment, I decided to end the episode here. Thank you guys for watching part 2. I'll be back soon for more episodes, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one.